Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Okay. So as I was saying, getting ready for Innawoods Fun, getting my gear, and getting all settled, making sure my animals have enough food till I get back. Now that I have all my gear all set, I am ready to head out and go for the walk to my destination. When I walked out of my house door and got done making sure the animals had enough food for the 3 days, I started to walk when I noticed that they were all acting up, such as my dog kept staring at a tree, which actually looked pretty suspicious and gave off a creepy vibe, and that my chickens were just not doing anything, as if they had just turned to stone, plus my cat kept staring out the house window looking at the tree. I just decided to ignore the feeling, but decided to grab 5 extra arrows just in case. So now I started to begin my walk towards the location of the woods I was going to camp in, and when I was walking through the field to get there, I just could not stop looking behind me, kept thinking that something was following me with the intent of trying to harm me, but I just shrugged it off as me being paranoid. Within 30 to 46 minutes I had gotten to the destination, finally happy that I felt refreshed, and enjoyed that I was going to be in this fresh, nice woods, but of course with every ounce of something good there is also bad things hiding among the good ones, and that's when I looked at the clouds. Mushroom clouds, tall and limbering, grouping together, and getting ready to form a storm, so as soon as I saw this I thought that I should probably get my tent up as soon as I can, then possible hunt and check what else I can find, maybe some cool scenery, maybe a cave. So I had set up my tent and still had time before the storm would be near me at all, so I went hunting for some animals, luckily got myself a rabbit I could cook and found some berries that were safe to eat and actually tasted pretty good, so I made a tiny little rabbit and berry soup. After just sitting around for 15 minutes I noticed that the storm had completely passed over me and, luckily, had not ruined my day of exploring, so I thought that I should go looking for some scenery or more of those delicious berries or another rabbit. When I was walking around I got that feeling of something tracking me down again, but it left quickly. All in all, I only caught 2 more rabbits and a handful of those berries and left for the tiny makeshift camp I built earlier. Now I was at the camp and it was about 10:23, so I decided to just have another bowl of soup along with berry-flavored water to wash it down, and then I just fell asleep. I woke up to something eerie yet familiar. It was a blood-freezing scream, so loud and so horrible that I just froze in place and heard the sound of another scream, that of a small rabbit. Then there was the sound of blood spilling and bones crushing, then slurping. Doing what could have gotten me killed, I looked out of the bottom of the tent flap. I saw something that made me just want to run to the hills, and never stop running after that. When I looked out I saw this sorta 6'7" looking black and gray creature, slurping on that poor bunny's blood and guts, then it just threw it towards a branch and spiked it. When the rabbit was finally dead and the creature was satisfied with its food, it started walking towards my tent. I slowly backed away from the sleeping bag and pulled it over me so I could try to hide and not meet my death, and just stayed still. It was there, sniffing and looking around, apparently unhappy that I wasn't there, letting out yet another scream, and since I could hear it so close, it sounded like this. Imagine the sound from every monster from Amnesia combined, and played backwards while a tiny high-pitched scream, hard to hear, was heard along with it. After those following events, I took a not-so-comfortable nap and only got 30 minutes in. So I just thought how wonderful it would be to just go hunting to ease my mind off, and I was walking when all of a sudden a moose just bolts as fast as it can across a clearing, and then it was gone. I looked to see what spooked it, and there it was. Just standing there, looking me dead in the eyes, and as if it couldn't get worse. It smiled, started waving like I was his friend that he hadn't seen in a long time. Tired of this thing trying to taunt me, I decided to shoot it in the elbow, and then boom, it started wailing its arm and screaming, all the while looking at me. I guess this thing was now pissed, and it started running towards me, and it was actually pretty fast, but I managed to get it in the knee and it fell pretty hard, so now that I had the chance to start running from this, I took the chance and did. Never stopped running, and by the time I reached the field, I took a breath and looked to see if it was following me. It wasn't near me, but I saw it near the edge of the woods, just sitting there and smiling again, so I just got up and left as fast as I could. So now I was heading home. Thinking about what kind of gun I should get, as using my bow was not the best thing to use if I went in a woods again. So now I was home and I noticed that the tree was gone. The fucking tree was gone. It was watching me walk the entire time, blending in with the trees. And that concludes what happened when I went in a woods. Hope that thing is dead by now, and I did try to go there again and find it, but it either left or went off into hiding or died. Speaking of in a woods, any of you guys got a good recommendation for a new weapon? Been thinking of just getting a crossbow or maybe handgun. All in all, it was fun times in a woods until Creep McDead showed up.
I'll do this then. This was 2 nights ago. I got back from watching Iron Man 3. It's 12:14. Grab a smoke and light it up. Look towards the wooded area by my house, because I like looking in there. Decide out of the blue to grab a flashlight and walk around in it. It's rather small foliage, not more than maybe 5 acres, the rest has been torn down due to housing. There are 2 abandoned houses there. Walk around and check out houses, only being scared of spiders. First one is directly across the street, so I don't stay long because I see it every day. Go to the second house, which is in the middle of the wooded part. Never really looked around in it. Roof is caved in, parts of the house are thrown about, furniture is still inside, and looks like a crushed dollhouse. Step inside the tiny entryway. Decide to be tough shit and shout, "If there are spirits here, then show me a sign." Right after I say that, I hear a low, loud growl. It was comparable to a roar, but lower and more throaty. Turn my flashlight in the direction of the sound and see a man in a hood. His face was covered by something, may or may not be a hood. Turn and nope the fuck out. Run back home and lock my doors. Look outside through my window and see nothing. Relieved it didn't follow me. Not super spooky, but it just happened and shook me a bit.
I got a story. Be prepper. Since I constantly go keyboard commando, and it's happening season, bail to Appalachia. I took a 4-day kit and AM1 Garand with 384 FMJ. Enough tactical grubbery, it's where it got real. Hiking along, stopping to check the compass about 250 yards or so. Notice some scraping on the trees, about a week old. I presume it's a bear, and this is a territory marking. Get a bit nervous, keep walking. About 400 yards ahead downhill, sound of water.avi. About to get some water, guess what the breeze delivered to my nose? A fucking scully. It's a white-tailed doe, limply rotting on a tree stump. Same scrapping too, but fresher by a few days. Not today, motherfucker. Go uphill some more and follow the highway a little to close for my comfort. Set up a tarp tent combo. Night, soundless sleep. Wake to sunrise, not birds. Pack up and keep on. Snack on homemade MRE at 9:21. Notice the birds are getting the hell out from across the highway. I just load the rifle. After burying the MRE and sloppy closing the bottom compartment of my backpack. Move further away from highway, some cars, just some big rigs. My schnoz is alert, wafting, yep, another dead animal. Moo ears hear some crunching. Bring rifle to shoulder, engage tactical mode. Begin looking to the sound, it's from the same bearing as the diaspora of avians. Reach down, throw a rock at a sapling. Shit gets silent, not ready for any bear fight, and concerned my 3006 isn't going to be enough, go up a tree. Like literally up a tree in ultimate nope mode. Look down, through the foliage, see leaves. Then a large mossy mass, hunched over on all fours, meanders to the sapling. Clamp down lungs, not gonna let it hear me. Watch as Mossy gets bored, and begins knocking lightly on nearby oaks. Eventually he gets to mine, sweat is intense. Knocking intensifies, and my gear isn't synced right cause of breakfast. Mossy fellow still knocking hard enough that I can feel the tree move a bit. Not good. Mossy dude is done knocking, he goes off to an adjacent tree. It's some kind of thick oak, low branches and large budding spring leaves. Mossy Guy is tapping away. Mossy Guy is hitting that tree. Pound it Mossy friend. Nah, he keeps that chill steady tap going. Then I blink. One dead doe where Mossy bro was. I'm not having any of this jewelry. Stay up there in the tree long into the next day. Set up an improv hammock too. Finally accept that Mossy bro is gone. I begin my descent. It's 11:08 a.m. Hand over hand, move foot. It's 11:13. Assume my wristwatch is broken. Time to abort mission. Finally get down. It's 11:16. Staring at me on the very same tree I was on is a large scraping. Something odd here. La tree has already begun to bark over. Fuck time. Fuck this. Check watch 11:20. Hike to the road. Plan to get to a mile marker and call a not Mossy bro to drive out and get me. Since I'm still carrying a full rifle, I can't be seen holding it near the road. Reach highway. It's 12:02. Assume the watch is broken. Open smartphone. It's 12:05. Assume smartphones are shittered too. Call bro. He's 20 minutes away. Checking my watch constantly. Even though I haven't ate since yesterday night, not gonna open the last MRE. See bro's car coming up. I load my pack in his backseat and the M1 Garand in the floorboard. Call shotgun. Some joking. Drive off. Last thing I saw in that stretch of woods that day was the birds flying off from the forest behind the same mile marker I was waiting at.
Hardly Innawoods, but I want more stories, so here goes. A solid line of forest behind the duplex, not sure how far it spans, but it's about the length of a football field from my backyard to the end. Incredibly steep, like to the point where you have to grab trees and pull yourself up to traverse it. The one time me and some friends went exploring, nothing happened. We saw it opened up to a golf course at the top. So we have this about 4-foot tall Pink Panther plush. Edgy teenagers with swords and whatnot generally beat the shit out of it. Swords were dull, didn't actually do much. I forget why, but we take it up into the woods one day. Find what looks like somewhere a hobo lived, booze bottles, shirts, trash etc. everywhere and a raggedy blanket. Fucking around tossing bottles and shit, hear rustling in the distance, like at least man-sized rusting. Can't make out where it's coming from, the trees aren't even that dense. Always get kind of an ominous feeling when we go in there. We nope out, leaving the panther. About a week later we mustered the courage to go get it. We need something to go ninja on. Find it where we left it. Its torso was torn to shreds, where the stomach was just stuffing ripped out indiscriminately like whatever did it expected entrails, arm missing, eyes and throat gashed out, also extremely dirty, looks like it had been exposed to the elements for a long time. Start to nope and hear the same rusting. Super nope engaged. Nearly sprint downhill, which takes a lot longer because of the incline. Get out unscathed aside from small cuts etc. running through the foliage. Feel like we're safe, kind of just staring into the trees. Hear rusting very close to the tree line, which is about 50 foot from the back of the duplex. Bolt inside, shitting bricks. Watch out window for an hour. Nothing. Make ramen. We never go up there again, though once fall comes we spot the arm that was missing stuck up in a tree. Probably just a bored or mad hobo, but was still too spooky for me.
I was around 17 years old, in South Carolina, driving up from Charleston to Dorchester for a party with a friend of mine named Kyle. I was the driver, and he was the passenger. Now, I'd lived in South Carolina for 7 years, and spent another 6 in Sevierville, Tennessee prior to that, and I was in love with the wilderness. Nothing creepy had ever happened in all that time, regardless of how rural or backwoods I'd gotten. So, driving up there, the hour got late. We were on a stretch of lonely road with nothing but woods and swamp on either side of the road. No buildings, no houses, and no real civilization for around 30 miles ahead and behind us. Conversation was typical 17-year-old dude conversation. Dude, we're gonna get so wasted. I haven't seen these guys in forever, and so on and so forth. I have my eyes on the road, however, in order to make sure I don't slam into some random wildlife crossing by, with no lights, in the woods, at 1:30 in the AM, visibility was fairly shitty. As I'm talking, I spot something around 500 feet up the road walking along the side of the pavement towards our car. As my mind is on driving and convo, my first thought on the figure was probably some hitchhiker, or maybe someone's car broke down. However, as soon as I heard how strange both of those possibilities sounded, I started to watch the figure more closely. 1:40 in the AM, now, middle of the fucking woods, with no civilization for dozens of miles in either direction, and the road is one way. I haven't passed a car, or seen another car, in over an hour. Conversation slows down as the figure gets closer. I realize something isn't quite right because it's way too tall now that it's closer. I'm 5 feet 10 inches, and my friend was 6 feet 1 inch, and 245 pounds, but this thing? This thing had to have been 8 feet at least, and the body proportions were wrong. The arms dangled far below the hip, with humanesque hands, with way too long fingers. I could not make out claws, but who knows, it was dark. The head was bald. The skin was pale gray-white, like a maggot, and mottled brown splotches, which may have been dirt or natural coloration, were mixed in. The eyes were black, large, and reflected light in a predatory way when the truck's lamps shone on them. The legs were bent oddly at the knees, but were quite long nonetheless. Couldn't make out the feet, but the hands were humanish, so I'd presume the feet were, too. The worst part was the mouth. Imagine a human mouth, where the lower jaw has been stretched and distended all the way down to the chest. The teeth were yellow and sharp, the mouth was red, but had no visible tongue lolling around. Conversation stopped dead. I flicked the high beams on, as it seemed to be quickening pace as we approached, moving in a very jerky and halting manner, and when the high beams hit, it shrieked in a weird, two-toned way, and made to move across the road. Which was bad, because my reaction had been to slam on the accelerator in order to pass the thing by. We locked eyes as I approached, and I introduced that gray-skinned motherfucker to a Ford F-150 doing about 70. When we collided, everybody screamed, me, Kyle, and Stretch Armstrong, and the thing made a pleasingly solid T-chone upon impact with the right corner of the hood and bumper. The shrieking stopped abruptly and turned into a squalling moan, and the impact sent it hurtling into a tree on the roadside. We kept going. There was no blood, and only minor damage to the truck. I love steel. As we passed it, I told him to check our 6, and he said,
"It's down. I can see its legs. It's not moving."
I nodded once, and stayed quiet for another 5 minutes. My friend, who was used to being a badass and playing high school football on the D-line, was visibly shaken. He was in his seat, and he was hyperventilating. I drove the rest of the way in silence, got to the party, said hi so I could get through the door, locked myself in the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror, and probably cried for about 15 minutes. No clue what road. I live in Miami now, and I'm 27. I don't really care whether anyone believes me. I know what I saw, and I saw it way before I ever even heard 4chan existed, or knew what a Skinwalker was. I was a huge nerd, very much into D&D and other crap, so part of my issue was trying to figure out what fucking monster I even saw. It didn't seem to match any description of anything I'd ever heard of. All I knew was, it wasn't human, and we gave it a black eye in exchange for a dented hood and scratched paint, so I knew it was solid and not some kind of ghost or hallucination. I actually decided to share the story, because some of the Skinwalker posts have mentioned them as being gray-skinned, naked men, which synced up exactly with what I saw. It's actually comforting to know other people have encountered them, and I hope it comforts the people who have encountered them to know that they don't seem to enjoy being broadsided by 3 tons of steel at 70 miles per hour.
I live in Arizona. The woods north of where I live are called Payson. When I was 9 and my uncle was 11, we went for a hike in the woods. My uncle had gotten a 9mm for his 10th birthday, sort of a family tradition. We were told not to take it with us on our hike, so of course we hid that fucker and put a fake black BB gun in its place. My fat aunt had no idea. We wanted to go shooting, so we walked along the way into the woods long enough so that no one would hear us. This was both good and bad, I will explain. We finally thought we were far enough away so that no one would hear us, but then we saw the cabin. It was really weird to see a cabin this far out, and I had a real creepy feeling about the whole thing. My uncle was a very brave guy and also very caring and protective of me. Pretty much all you could ask for in an uncle. He decided to make sure no one was there, and then we could shoot some cans and shit. I stayed outside and waited for him. About 7 minutes later I heard a loud smash and sounds of a fight taking place. I ran toward the house, but I cannot explain the fear I felt. I had an abusive stepdad and it made me very timid. When I got to the back door I could see into what was the kitchen. I saw my uncle laying on the floor and bleeding from his head. A homeless man, by the look of him, was holding him by his penis and balls and was squeezing them, asking if he was alone. My uncle yelled over and over that he was all alone. The man started kissing him and flipped his body over. At that moment my uncle noticed my crying face in the doorway and mouthed the word "run." He did not look afraid, he looked strong and caring. I understood he was saving my life and it broke my heart. Crawled back to our backpacks and remembered the gun. I took the gun shaking out of the holster. My grandpa showed me how to use it. I went through the front of the house trying to be quiet. I could hear the sounds my uncle and the man were making and they were awful. I pointed the gun at the back of the man and shot twice. I was expecting the sound but not the smell. All at once I could smell the most awful thing I had ever smelled before. It was blood and sweat and fear. I get sick just thinking about it. The man was trying to duct tape my uncle's hands and was about halfway done. The man fell forward, blood coming out of him faster than I thought possible. My uncle looked at me from over his shoulder and gave me a wide smile. His eyes stayed on me as he got up, pulled up his pants and took the gun from my hand. He said I did a good thing and that I had saved him. The man was making an awful sound and sorta snake crawling on the floor. My uncle shot him in the back of the head and he stopped. The walk back was very hard for my uncle and I could see he was in a lot of pain. He had blood running down his leg and I hate to think where it was coming from. We told my grandfather the whole story and he drove my uncle to the hospital. He had to get 11 stitches in his anus and the recovery was awful. The police did not find the cabin or the man. They looked for like 2 weeks, even used a helicopter. They took our statement and that was it. People said I saved my uncle's life, but it was his courage and my grandfather training us that got us out alive. I miss my grandpa Ralph. As for my uncle, he is doing fine. He is a police officer and works with assault survivors. I love you, Chris. You are my hero.
I spend a lot of time outdoors, and I've only had one truly creepy experience. My friend and I do a ton of hiking, hunting, fishing, and general outdoors stuff. His older brother has a small cabin in upstate New York just outside of Rome, which is surrounded by state game lands. We go up there all the time. Pack up the truck, hitch the trailer with the quads, and go. This happened while we were up there. I'm 22 at the time and my friend is 25. Making a trip up to the cabin in late September to start scouting some game trails and set up stands for the season. Also just to get away and fuck off. Pack the truck with food, clothes, ammo and our guns. Hitch the trailer with a generator and 2 quads. Finally get there after a 6-hour ride. It's about 8 p.m. so it's getting dark out fast, so we get a fire going, crack some beer and get to unpacking. Cabin is located in the only clearing on the property. Clearing is about 100 yards by 80 yards. While we're unpacking, we notice shit is super quiet, which isn't necessarily cause for alarm. It's just strange that it's so quiet it causes me to take notice. Finish unpacking around 10 p.m. and hit the sack around 11 p.m. Now, when I say a small cabin, I mean it's a small cabin. About 350 SF total, with a loft at both ends in the rafters where the bunks are located. Mine is located directly over the only door to the cabin. I wake up around 4 a.m. and hear something moving around outside. I just lay there and listen for a while, figuring it's either a coon or possum looking for some scraps. But it clearly sounds like it's walking on two legs. Typically raccoons make more of a shuffling, rummaging sound. Say fuck it and go back to sleep. Wake up the next morning. Don't even recall waking up. Go outside and get a fire going for breakfast. Shit just ain't right. Certain things are moving. Definitely not in the same place we left them last night. Memory is jogged and I remember waking up last night. Ask my friend if he heard anything. Says he remembers waking up, but doesn't recall hearing anything. He asks me why I moved all the shit around this morning. Tell him I didn't, and about how I heard something moving around outside last night. He says if it wasn't a coon, it was probably a coyote or a bear. This makes sense. Decide to go for a hike to start scouting some trails. We grab our packs and head out. Walk for a few miles when we come to this lake we always go to as a starting point. All game trails go to this lake. It's the main source of water for the deer and such. Hanging around the lake shore looking for signs. Look across the lake, which is about 250 feet to 300 feet. The bushes are moving. We both see it but can't really see what's causing it. Decide to not fuck with it and continue around the lake. Spend the rest of the day scouting and shit. Head back to the cabin around 4 p.m. Get back to clearing. More shit is moved. WTF, seems like someone is trying to fuck with us. Cooler was on one side of the door when we left, but now it's on the other side of the door. Generator was positioned exhaust facing away from the cabin. Now it's turned around. My friend and I are getting freaked out. Both decide that there's no way this isn't some sort of person trying to fuck with us. Immediately arm ourselves when we get back to the cabin. He's carrying his Glock 20 and I'm carrying my Steyr M40. Keep 12 GA in the cabin. Night rolls in and we get a fire going. Around 9:30 p.m. we start hearing rustling just outside the firelight. Sounds like people running back and forth. There's at least two of them. Here running to the north. Stops. Here running to the south. Stops. Friend and I instantly grab our guns and our flashlights and start scanning the tree line. Both at condition 0. Running has stopped, but we can see anything in the woods. Friend screams.
If anyone's out there trying to fuck around, you're about to get fucking shot.
Something starts running on the back side of the cabin. Neither of us can see due to the cabin being in the way. Decide fuck this. Get back to back and make our way into the cabin. Once we get into the cabin, my friend grabs the 12 GAI, lock the door, and we both get into the center of the cabin. Whatever these things were, start running around outside the cabin. Sometimes they're real close and sound like they're just outside the wall. Other times they sound like they're further out, just running around. Occasionally one will creep up and slam the wall or door. This goes on for about 2 hours. During this time my friend and I are communicating using a pen and paper. Our nerves are so frayed by the point we say fuck it. I grab the spotlight his brother kept in the cabin and my pistol. He shoulders the shotgun. We slam the door open expecting to shoot at the first sign of movement, but instead all we see is our fire. Whatever was out there made a huge fucking bonfire in our fire pit while they were running around. We go back to back and make our way to the truck. Friend grabs the spotlight to keep watch. I check in and under the truck to make sure nothing's there. Everything's clear, so I disconnect the trailer and we just go in and take off. Drive about 2 hours into town and sleep in the truck. Come back in the morning and everything is as it was left. Nothing in the cabin is destroyed. None of our clothes or anything are missing. The only thing different was at the back of the cabin there were rocks laid out so they made a pentagram. Immediately pack up our shit, lock up the cabin and get the fuck out of there. Tell his older brother about it when we get back. He says,
When I first stayed up there I had something similar happen. Except I'm fairly sure I shot one of them with the SKS I had with me.
Said he went into town and stopped at a bar on his way out. Got to talking with one of the locals about it. The local said shit like that isn't unheard of out there. We've been back since and haven't had any problems, but that was by far the weirdest and scariest thing I've ever had happen to me.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.